Good afternoon. My name is Dan Kuzel. I'm the U.S. telecommunications industry leader for IBM. I'm here today with a great team and group from AWS, from Verizon, and from IBM. We're going to be talking about a topic that is interesting by nature, but also very revolutionary. And I think it's something that it's part of what we're going to see in the future, which is around the next generation broadcasting on the edge. Before we jump into the insights that we will go into, I'd like to do a quick round of introductions for the team. So let me start with Mike Zirkle from Verizon.
Yeah, so Mike Zirkle, I lead our Vice President of 5G ecosystem at Verizon, which has responsibility for our 5G portfolio, our private wireless networks, and our relationship with AWS and Wavelength Zone.
Thank you, Mike. Pankaj from IBM.
Pankaj Kumar. I'm partner with IBM Consulting in communication industry and also AWS practice leader for communications, and I work across telco clients like Verizon.
Perfect. Amir from AWS.
Amir from AWS. I lead our product management efforts for all our telco customers across the value chain of the businesses and across the topology of the networks. Basically, AWS is a cloud platform to enable the telco network transformation of the future.
Excellent. So, Amir, let me start with you. The topic of edge in telco has been a very talked about topic over the last few years, and I think we're starting to see it manifest itself. But I want to get from your perspective, how do you view the edge, and more importantly, how do you view that it's being adopted within the industry, and then what wavelength is within that application?
Okay. Now, so edge from AWS, which is a cloud provider first and foremost, there are certain use cases that have existed and will continue to flourish in future that would need compute and networking resources closer to where the data is being originated. These use cases need data processing to happen where the data is getting originated. And now you put that in the context of a telco network and a 5G network. 5G has brought us immense capabilities, some new capabilities such as creating specific latency profiles, creating specific jitter profiles, creating specific quality of service profiles for the specific use cases which can be processed at the edge. So if you look at it in the continuum from a cloud perspective, you've got large data centers, which AWS calls this availability zones. Then we've got our metropolitan-based data centers, which we call local zones. And then right at the edge, in the Verizon premises, we've installed multi-tenant edge compute facilities, which are known as wavelength zones. So essentially, which allows to harness the power of 5G from a connectivity perspective, to benefit from the latency, the jitter, the QoS profiles, and there are so many other parameters, APIs, as we've generally seen in the industry, that can be used to characterize those use cases, and then those use cases specifically run on wavelength zones, and the processing is very, very fast and very, very resilient because it can benefit from all the AWS cloud continuum that has existed in AWS availability zones and local zones.
Understood. So Pankaj, when you think about that description of wavelength and the edge, talk to me a little bit about the scope and what the outcome is within this program for next-gen broadcasting.
Sure. So IBM Consulting works with media and entertainment companies in two forms. One is around live broadcasting. The second is OTT, which is over the top, which is recorded. The one that we are talking about here is live. The dynamics of a live programming is very different than a recorded programming. And all the reasons that Amir just laid out in terms of latency, in terms of resiliency, are all very applicable when we are talking about live broadcasting. So the case in question here is around closed captioning. And we are enabling this large broadcasting company out of the US to have transformation in their closed captioning process to improve accuracy, but also bring other business benefits that we will talk about as we go along in the conversation. But first and foremost was the accuracy and bringing the latency down from whatever it is today.
And Mike, why is this important for Verizon? How do you view Verizon in this? And both in terms of wavelength and then this target segment.
What gets interesting from a Verizon perspective, and I think from a broader telco industry globally, the power of the edge and where 5G can really start to shine, as Amir said, in those use cases. The use cases have to have that almost direct connection to the data traffic, right? So with 5G and where we've deployed wavelength zone, right, really at the edge of our network, it's truly where a subscriber connects in, so you're as close to the data as possible. The latency profiles that he talked about, the reduction of jitter, certainly with what Pankaj has been able to do, that shows not just the latency and the jitter, but the data residency capabilities, the resiliency of the network, the security of the subscriber in. It just helps us extend that use case and that value. Particularly as we'll talk, some of the inference of Gen AI gets important closer to the edge. That those mobile subscribers and how we monetize 5G continues to extend and show in these use cases.
And Mike, talk to me a little bit about your perspective when we think about M&E, media and entertainment. Why is a broadcaster such a good fit, and how do you feel other M&E examples would apply?
I think M&E, when you look at where kind of the use cases fit in the solutions, connected stadiums, venues, which we've had a lot of press around, particularly with sports teams and those venues. We also do a lot with both IBM and AWS when you think about access into venues, right? Some facial recognition, some of the crowd analytics. Those are kind of great examples of how to leverage the technology and the partnership between the three of us to then drive those outcomes for those customers broadly. This is a fairly new use case over the last couple of months that extends that even differently. I don't want to steal his thunder on the solution. As we get into that, the way that we've been able to leverage all of those components really bring out the value of kind of the hybrid nature of where wavelength zone fits versus the availability zones and the local zones.
And if I can double click on the monetization piece that Michael talked about. So for closed captioning, there is a regulation from federal communication commissions in terms of 4 seconds, right? I think if we were to do that, today we can do it without wavelength, like it's doable. But I think we're going beyond just what is necessary to how do we really get into monetization zone, which is if we can save, say, a few seconds there, from 4 seconds, so we can bring it down to 2 seconds. That's extra 2 seconds to process the quality. What else can be done in those 2 seconds? Can we get different languages? Closed captioning for multi-language. Today, it's not easy if you were to do that on live TV. That's the distinction, right? In the program, in the movies, you can change the subtitles to French and German. It's all good. But when the live event is happening, breaking news, games, sports events, when live is happening, it's just hard. So whatever time we help save, that is the time we can do things around it which can be useful to monetize. Another aspect to that is, and this is really futuristic, as you rightly pointed out, we are talking about futuristic. So this one around ad insertion. If we were to do dynamic ad insertion, today it may not be possible to do it in 2 seconds. But technology is transforming in a fundamentally different way today. A year down the line, will advertisers be able to dynamically add advertisement based on the context of what is written there? Probably yes. It's not there yet, but that's where the monetization comes in.
Amir, any other thoughts from your end around the importance within the industry?
Yeah, before I go there, I'd just like to pick on something that Pankaj mentioned. It's a monetization. Monetization is really a function of the user experience. So when you think of 2 seconds that Pankaj just mentioned, what is our job between AWS and Verizon? We want to reduce that. If you've got a total budget of 2 seconds, we want to reduce that to as fewer milliseconds as possible for the data path that the wireless 5G network is consuming and the processing path where AWS compute is running, which will actually give you, out of the 2-second budget, probably we want to give you like better part of those 2 seconds. Actually, we want to give you probably, maybe you don't want to consume more than 25 milliseconds, all up for the whole thing. Which this is the power of the edge, and in context of 5G and the edge compute from a wavelength perspective. And if I just use this example to answer the specific question you asked, we need to look for use cases that would benefit from this capability. We don't want to look for the solutions that are looking for an answer. We basically look for specific attributes, specific use cases where we can actually improve the end user experience. If we can improve the end user experience, I believe people will be willing to pay. They pay for the user experience that we bring. And between AWS and Verizon, and with the help of partners like IBM, we are very confident that the industry is coming together to help the enterprises, maximize their chances of profitability in offering an unparalleled user experience. That should be the objective.
So, when I think about the power of what the three parties bring together, I hear speed, I hear innovation, I hear resiliency and security. And the power of these three together provide for this great solution. I am personally super excited to see where this goes, what the future has in store, and want to say thank you to the three of you for joining me.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.